Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the American Sports Connection. I'm your host, the one and only Joey Railroads. Before I bring in my special guest today, don't forget to check out our social media stuff, facebook.com/ASC pods, PODS, same for Twitter, Instagram. Everything's nice and easy to find. All right, our special guest today, he's been everywhere in, I would say in this country, but everywhere in the world. You've seen him as either under a mask or not under a mask and doing all kinds of crazy shit. Ladies and gentlemen, Chainsaw Tony Myers. Tony, how are you doing, man?
I'm better now knowing that we have a solid connection.
That always helps, right?
Oh, yeah. Of course it does. Oh, boy. Yeah, I'm doing great, man. I got about 3.5 weeks to go before I am going straight to Oregon and wrestling in Washington. And there's like 2 seminars there. And then I go straight. When the Japanese got me the ticket, they got it out of Newark International. So then I got to fly all the way back.
Oh,
just to
that sucks.
And there's a connecting flight because promoter, Ron Von Hess, when he went to buy the ticket, he had one of his students as part of their paying dues buy the ticket. So it's a connecting flight to Texas. So it's kind of like, I think I'm going to go over to Texas and then pick up the chainsaw guy. And then, we'll head straight to the West Coast. And that'll be the Sayonara America this time around.
That should be an adventure, picking that up in Texas.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Like, of all people, my parents stepped up and they're like, we'll drop you off at the airport. And I'm like, drop me off the night before because it's like the flight is at 6 a.m.
Oh, God.
So I don't want my parents staying up all night long worried because, that's what they do.
Yeah, it's a parent thing.
Yeah, my parents, who are actually great-grandparents because of my middle kid having a kid and making me a grandfather last year. And they still worry the way that they do about me. It's just inherent nature.
My mother's the same way, where like if I'm out at shows, doing recording stuff or media or whatever, she's like, text me when you're on your way home. Make sure I know you're okay.
That's because you have a good mother, and that's what moms do. I mean, my father is completely into retirement, 78. My mom's 76. I try to get by the house and see him as often as possible, but you know how much they worry about me, especially when stuff surfaces online and we get blown up and all kinds of crazy shit. Imagine them explaining that to their friends who are like, oh, so-and-so, my kid just got promoted in his job at UPS. They're like, my kid's taking an exploding barbed wire bat tomorrow night, a half pointed away.
Yeah, it's like, I could only imagine trying to explain that to someone.
Yeah, and then when Pogo was wanting to recruit my oldest, who's a volleyball player for Utica, and I was just like, Pogo, she belongs anywhere around professional wrestling, but he pursued it for a bit, and then he understood the parenting thing that I was like, I don't want her around wrestling. I really don't need that.
I can completely understand it, especially, I don't want to say it's bad over there, but that they lay them in over there.
Yeah, and at first she kind of sort of got into it. She kind of got into pageantry, and then this is my oldest kid who turned 21 like 2 weeks ago. She was like, nah, they're just, nah. And, that's all the stuff I tried to explain to her, but if I had pushed it on her, she would have just rebunked the whole thing and been like, wow, what is this? Maybe I do need to get into it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, you're also talking about my best friend in the whole world, too. So it's like she knows I'm not going to pull any punches. And she knows I'm always going to be there to look out for her. So on top of being her parent.
Yeah, my kid's the same way. He wants to do it already. And I'm like, let's wait, because he'll be 11 in January. And I'm like, dude, let's wait until you're at least like 14 or 15. And if you're still serious, then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, though, that your kids have a bond with you over something like that. I mean, I got 3 girls, my divine punishment for being a male. It's the world of difference, it's once in a while my oldest will like screenshot me something from one of the wrestlers, like, Yeah, this guy's he's wanting to date me, and the first thing I always think about is he's trying to like Triple H his way in, because I get enough people asking me to get them booked overseas. I'm like, is he going for that? Or I was like, what could this guy possibly have in common with a gorgeous, drop dead, gorgeous 21-year-old girl? Like, it's one of those things. And then on top of it, it's like, I get enough people asking me, how to get a foot in the door over there. If you have started to get a foot in the door over there, I could only tell you one way or another what there is to do or what you could possibly do. I mean, my house is always an open door for stuff like that. If people hit me up with a message and ask me how or tell me how things are going, okay. But if you think you're going to like coattail off of me, like, I don't know, I'm your typical sketchy pro wrestler. The first thing that pops through my mind is like, what is this guy's angle? What does he want? Everything's a work.
Yeah, like you automatically think of the worst of someone.
Yeah, you almost always do. And it's because, like, I don't know, for all the backbreaking I've done since I got a foot in the door over there in 94, it's like, it could all be gone tomorrow if I just screw one thing up. And God forbid I bring somebody in who's going to screw things up. It's the world of difference. Like, Matt Tremont always gave me the world of credit. He's like, you helped me get into, and I was like, I didn't help nothing. The FMW office came to me and asked me, like, of this Matt Tremont? Do you know CZW? And that was it. His busting his ass and working as hard as he did, that's what got him there. Nothing that I did myself got him anywhere.
No, I understand. What I wanted to know is, what were your like first memories of wrestling growing up? Do you remember like how you got into it as a kid, like who you liked? Or
the funny thing was, like, I would always see like friends and neighbors watching it because it seemed like it was on TV all the time, or if it was just that early Saturday morning. And we didn't have school, like kids from the neighborhood would be watching it. My father is a firefighter. He would take me to like firehouse and I would see people there watching it. So it was like, there was always like a registered opinion by everybody. This guy, that guy, the heels, the baby faces. And I just kind of grew into it. You would see the Iron Sheik up there and, what heat that guy would get. And then it just kind of morphed into, it was like, watch any wrestling that I could. It's just fun. It's a world away from the reality that we live in. And I don't know if it really answers the question or not, but it's just something that like grew on me. And then, of course, watching Hulk Hogan and WWF go national, growing up in the Northeast, it was like between that and then going to like area independent shows or the WWF like C-Town house shows, it was like you got to see all these guys, even on the smaller bases. So I didn't, I kind of migrated to just whether you were in the opening match or whether you were the main event, I was like, hey, it's a professional wrestler. I didn't really gravitate toward that guy's my favorite or that one.
yeah, no, and then what you're talking about, I always remember growing up you talk about Saturday mornings, it was always back to back. It was Wrestling Challenge and Superstars.
Yeah, and then they had the other show. It was Spotlight that aired like later Saturday. Yeah, and in between that, if you had cable, you had ESPN. You go, wow, AWA is on Sunday. All the other places too, especially with the advent of cable TV, that just made you see that there was more out there. That and the newsstands where you would go and you'd go to buy one of Stanley Weston's like one of his publications, like Inside Wrestling or Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And, you would buy it for the WWF, but then you would start reading about the NWA guys and the AWA guys, or you would look at past issues and be like, oh, Adrian Adonis came from the AWA, huh? So you were more inclined to like check out all of that stuff because you were just, you saw that there was such variety out there.
Yeah, I agree. And then I remember, and you probably do more so being in North Jersey when, I can't remember the station, but it was one of the New York stations. They would have the show from the Garden.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Rich Mancuso and the WFAN
Yeah,
network.
those that too.
Yeah, 66, 66.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that radio show was geared toward like smarter fans. So eventually, I eventually found some kayfabe sheets and would ask around about getting into wrestling schools. And there was such a plethora of people starting up for every like Charlie Fulton, Monster Factory, Larry Sharp. There was Mike Sharp in Brick Township, New Jersey. Bill DeMont had a racquetball court in Lodi, New Jersey. Rocky Jones had ECPW in Lake Hiawatha, Northwest New Jersey. So it was like there was so many places and things that you could latch onto. And then when you would correspond with other guys that were trading tapes and as big of a fan as you, it just seemed like it was such an infinite, it was like a giant pool of people that you could just meet and talk to. And you found out that they had the same love for the same stuff that you did.
Yeah, man, and it was just, I've noticed, especially since I started going back to independence in the last few years, that I've always noticed if you're a fan, it's like you always get welcomed in regardless, what color you are, what, orientation you are. It's just like, you're one of us, come on in, let's just have a good time.
Yeah, because I think as time went on and more people got smartened up to what's going on, it just ultimately we're thankful that people get off their ass and come. Otherwise, they'd wait around for it on YouTube or get the download available from something else. I mean, right about now, like Naoshi Sano just put this out in Japan, and he was like, it's more and more geared toward, hey, you can watch this on your phone if you don't want to leave the house. So then, like, the live crowd is damaged, but the promotion is still making money because of downloads. There's so many different ways in this day and era, 2018, of, there's not the casual fan that's drawn in as much anymore, but they're still housing some really strong, like, revenue for each company. And there's so many good smaller companies now. There's now more than ever. There's so many stronger, like, smaller companies out there that it just, whether or not fans show up live, they're still supporting what they're supporting.
I agree with that. That I would say there's an indie boom right now.
I think so. I think like you're watching the bigger ones get kind of downsized more, but you're watching like a lot of people supporting local independents. And I mean, I've seen that with a plethora of independents just around this area that people are very diehard in supporting.
Oh man, you know that. Just in like Jersey, PA, and New York alone, there's tons of promotions.
Yeah, when I saw like that there was a genre of something like Beyond Wrestling, I go, then there's tons more out there that people could do just like that, except for maybe a different concept, so that they're not watching the same type of product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just thought it was so interesting to have the boys be the crowd, and then watching like Beyond Wrestling, it just kind of sort of morphed into more casual fans coming out and enjoying the show with everybody else. Like that's just one example of, but they blew up much bigger than I ever imagined.
Yeah, well, I think what happened to what you had said, where it's like 2018 and being on like YouTube and all the download stuff, I think that's what's really helped them get to where they are.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise it wasn't strictly the support of just, the boys watching the boys and the boys encouraging the boys. I mean, it looked like they started out in the woodshed somewhere out in the Midwest. And now when you see them promoting all these like dream matches and everything, you're like, obviously the money's coming from somewhere. Obviously somebody's making some money off of this. And none of those guys are at the point now where they're going to do it for nothing. So there's money being made there. No matter how you look at it, I see them as a really good and big success story. As to say, like, who's to say that the next average independent won't come above, won't catch on with just your normal everyday people.
No, I agree with that. My whole thing is in this area, and I've talked to Tremont about this ad nauseum, where you have to find a way to be different because there's so many people booking the same match like 5-6 times over.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, as a fan, wrestling now has got to be better than it ever was. You got the network, this, that, and the other. Like, this is like the era for people to be like actual fans of the product, because there's so much out there. There's so many other fans that are just as diehard as they are, that are on message boards and can communicate much better than we could back in the day when we all became super fans.
That's what I was just going to say. I tell these like younger guys, if I ride in cars with them and stuff to shows, I'm like, you don't know how lucky you have. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, you can, if you want to see something, any kind of wrestling anywhere in the world, you could probably find it on the internet now.
Yeah, and I remember, I've done like several podcasts now, and it's always cool because I have so much more to get off my chest. On the one that I did with Shaheen, I had told him, I was like, we kind of sort of live for the moment. We weren't in our phones, or sometimes we were taking notes, but it was like live for the moment. When you went to those old TWA shows, Todd Gordon out of Philadelphia before it was ECW.
Yeah.
Like we were watching something special, and there wasn't as much to distract you then. And you're usually there with friends, or if not friends, just people just like you that had a morbid curiosity, wanted to come out and check out what it was, And it's like the line of professional wrestler versus fan kind of became blurred in there, because everybody was such a super fan that eventually you found out that they were like a manager on a really low rent independent, so.
No, I agree with that. And the thing I loved about, you mentioned ECW, it was probably, I'll say like 94 when I discovered them. It was when they had the Bad Breed with the Taipei Death Match.
Yeah, which all the old timers were saying that's way too much, and even Terry Funk stood there and told them, like, you're not really supposed to hit each other with the bat. It's like, I mean, like somebody didn't think that Terry Funk was doing too much as NWA champion. Like, I know all the old timers would get down on Flair and Steamboat because they'd be like, those kids are doing way too much. It's, or some old timer probably went up to Bobby Eaton and was like, he's jumping off the top rope. Damn it. It's only the third match.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything has to come. Everything has to move. Everything, you can't just have the same formula over and over and over again. What worked in the 80s, there's no reason that it's going to work in 2018. It just looks so out of place and ridiculous. When you look at it, you're like, wrestling has to move on. In any direction, it has to move on. Like, you see so many old timers, or guys that didn't exactly make it that are around my age, and they'll be on Facebook, and that's wrestling just terrible these days. And it's like, man, you sound just like one of those old timers that we would look and laugh at. The only difference is those old timers back in the day had been somewhere and had made a living doing this.
Yeah, you're right in the sense of, like, wrestling has to evolve, because if you don't evolve, then you're going to get passed by.
Yeah, and people appreciate your effort anyway, so what difference does it make? If everybody's smart, they know when you're being lazy, then that just means you have to work hard. Well, what are we doing out there if we're not, like, dumping all of our passion and trying to parlay it into what we love? It's like so many times you'll hear people talk about their passion and love for wrestling. But when you mention that, you want to come in a car, you want to see if you can get booked on this, you'll see guys just scatter everywhere.
Yep. Oh no, I got to do this, or oh no, I have this or that. If you, like you said, if you really want it so bad, then you're gonna, as they say, do the drives.
Yeah, you're gonna, no matter what, regardless, and you won't find any excuses either. Like, I can't begin to tell you how many times I've missed out on weddings and anniversaries and kids' birthday and all that stuff. It's just countless the amount of times. But I come to realize that nobody ever put a gun to my head and made me do anything. So who am I to complain?
Yeah, you wanted to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I realize the sacrifice I make by uprooting, and then in like another month I'll be back in Japan. I realize all the sacrifice there, but too, you got to realize I have my own house over there. I miss my couch. I miss my bed. I miss my old lady. I've built for myself another life out there. As much time as I've spent out there, it just, I guess people acted like they were surprised in a way. You know, I wound up with a Japanese girlfriend that I'm marrying. That had to happen. When in Rome,
Do what the Romans do.
yeah, and I don't see an inherent problem with that. I spent more time last year overseas than I did here, stateside. So it's like I come back here, I get my living arrangement back. You know, I try to settle back into a regular life. I told you off the air, you know, I'm catering food, you know, but all that comes to an end, and I uproot and I change everything, change my lifestyle, change the way I'm eating. Hope to God that I keep on any size over there.
Now, what I would like to know, and I'm sure a lot of people would, what do you think is the big difference when you're over there than opposed to being back in the States?
Well, over there, it's, you know, it's treated more like a sport. There's definitely a higher level of respect for it. And the jokes and things that are done in jest, you know, it's very tongue-in-cheek. It translates horribly when it comes to like stateside stuff, like even especially with the death match. In the States, everyone just, you know, violence for the sake of violence, and this is how we get down. And over there, it's more of a, you know, this is the only way that we could settle this, or even if it's done under the standards of the FMW or the old wing banner, that people are like in on it. They understand what they're watching and why, and what style it is that you know, the promotion, versus over here where it's just like, all right, you know, it over there, you know, over an amount of time, it became like kind of like a distasteful freak show. And then with all the other independents popping up because of the initial success of FMW, it's just a plethora of independents where, you know, you could work 6 to 7 days a week if you want to. But so much gets lost in the translation. Like over there, yeah, you're treated like a gladiator. You're treated like a warrior. Over here, it's, you know, you're one step below you're one step below a circus clown and one step above a porn star. It's just a perception of the people.
I would kind of agree with that, where, because if you mention not so much wrestling in general, but like deathmatch stuff, people are like, oh, well, those guys are like circus freaks, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, in every genre of wrestling, I mean, how much more ridiculous does it look for guys that, you know, do the straight and, you know, or strong style, or not even strong style, but look at the compression of the spine.
Yeah.
Of just your average match, you know, or you're watching guys take bumps on the ring apron. It's like that in itself is way more taxing than a bunch of flesh wounds from doing death matches. Like there's a compression of the spine or compression of the vertebrae that could do way more damage than someone gigging their forehead while some jackass sticks a light tube in his head. You know, it's like.
Well, that reminds me, I can't remember the guy's name, in New Japan that used to do the shoot headbutts and almost killed himself because he got a hematoma.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at like New Japan, Kurosawa is still around. He still wrestles for the late Mr. Pogo's World Wing Spirit, WWS. Yeah. And I still watch him go out there every night and like headbutt the ring post. You know, the guy's 66 years old. Watching him do that. He was one of the very first trainees in the New Japan school. And, you know, I asked him one time, he goes, as long as you don't do it hard enough to rattle around your brain. He's like, because the skull is the thickest part in the human body. And it's like he has, you know, the guy's 66 and still going strong. Without the mask, when Pogo and them decided to go with me as a WWS champion, I had to defend the belt against that guy. Here's a guy that trained Bad News Allen, you know, Bad News Brown, Alan Coage.
Yeah.
Like, man, you better be thankful that this isn't work.
I just can't imagine being at that age still headbutting posts.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for him, he's like, I've done it for so long that it's just part of what I do. And I mean, he you know, without wrestling, he makes pottery. He even invited me over to his place one time, and Pogo goes, he never invites anybody over. He must think an awful lot of you. And I just took it as a big sign of honor. I just couldn't believe that I was actually there with him, you know, and that I wasn't just, trying to pick his brain with a bunch of questions or whatever. But as far as the perception, like stateside professional wrestling goes, I always kind of looked at it like this, like, with the death of kayfabe, this, that, and the other. I even try to tell like younger guys, like, look, kayfabe also exists. Like, don't be dating some girl and tell her what you're really getting to go, 300 miles away. That to me just kills the mystique of wrestling, because it's probably some rat that you're dating or whatever. So you'll be broken up with her anyway. And then she goes around telling everybody, wrestlers don't make shit. And it all ties into the horrible perception by just your average person of just how low rent and bad wrestling is, or what it is like to be a professional wrestler stateside struggling, trying to get recognized.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's just some things should not be known, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in that aspect of kayfabe should be alive and well. That just your average perception of or how you carry yourself, or I don't think that if you're at a wrestling school and just a normal person catches you on the outside walking down the street, that they would come up to you and be like, so you're a wrestler, huh? And I don't think your response should be, yeah, I'm trying to be, and I ain't made much money at this, but one day I hope to make it. It's like, no, let them think what they want as far as the money goes. Just don't out and out yourself as being one of the guys that's not making anything doing it. Then your average person is going to think you're a complete moron for even trying to do it. Knowing that you have no insurance or anything else.
No, I completely agree. Now, you talk about training. What was your training experience like back in the day?
That's the funniest thing, because 15 years of age, I just went to shows that were so bad and so local and so independent that even without training, with me just reading a bunch of kayfabe sheets, they put me in for a battle royal when I was like 15 years old.
Oh my God.
I went to shows that were that bad that they would literally use people from the audience. But it wasn't until I was 17 years old that I settled down and I realized that I would need training. By then I had done like a couple shows out in Indiana for Mike Samples. And would you believe it, without an ounce of training, it was just stuff that I had tried myself. You're walking past a door in your house and you draw back and you throw a punch at it. And you're like, that's a pretty good working punch. And then you get a video camera, you start filming yourself and you're like, how could this improve? But then, 17 years of age is when I decided to like settle down. I was like, I need training. And I would show those guys like videos of me wrestling. At some of the most god-awful indies. And, they went to charge me the $3,000, the 20, I think it was like 2,500 up at Rocky Jones Wrestling School, which is still around in its incarnation of ECPW out of Lake Hiawatha, New Jersey. But the minute I went there is when I, like Danny Inferno was just starting. He was like 14 or 15. Crowbar, we're the same age. And a few other guys. And through them, I found out about that I could go to Bill DeMont's. He rented out a racquetball court that was in Lodi, New Jersey. And then I got there and they were like, hey, we work out the Monster Factory. And that's in Flemington, New Jersey. And then some of those folks were working at Mike Sharp's wrestling school at Brick Township, New Jersey. So it was like, anytime I could get to any of those four from that point forward, I was there. I was trying to do the best that I could.
How do you think going to those schools kind of helped you become the performer you are now?
I think it's like 4 different places. So, you're being told a lot by a lot of people of what to do and what not to do. But one thing was all universal. Like, so many of the reversals, so many of the, just very basics, even footing in the ring. All that stuff was universal between all 4 of those places. So it was like, I got to soak in a wealth of knowledge from this person, that person. And, even back then, the questions that I asked were just off-based and just kind of strange for those guys to answer. But, nobody had smarted me up before I went into wrestling. Of what to do, what to say, etiquette, what not to say. So I just kind of did everything the hard way.
I was gonna say you learned like trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly. I learned fast, that what not to do, especially because, so many things that I screwed up. And then I had always kept the friendship with Jerry Lawler and Eddie Gilbert because Dennis Carloza would bring them in pretty often. But especially Eddie Gilbert, who was just kind of blown away what I knew, because by then, I'd be doing all the tape trading, so I'd get his stuff from Continental, and I'd get some of the stuff he did down in Puerto Rico, and just the old WWF stuff where he was teamed up with like Kurt Hennig, and it was like Eddie pretty much took a liking to me. And to date myself, I was bringing him like 6-hour VHS dubs of all the stuff I had on him. So, by the time I went to go down to Memphis, I had all the general and basic skills because I was taking any booking I could, even bookings where I lost money. But, it was just more about the experience, more about getting a foot in the door and getting to know people and network.
No, yeah, I can understand that. It's funny you mentioned Eddie Gilbert and Memphis. And I was just going to ask you, how did that all come about that you I think you said you were there for 16 years?
17 years,
oh,
yeah. 17. I lived. Yeah, but, doing a lot of that stuff, I would help them with videos behind the scenes, and it wasn't like a solid 16, 17 years because I always thought I had to preserve my health for whenever Japan would call back again. But my foot in the door came through Memphis and Eddie Gilbert back in like 94. So, but, yeah, Eddie just knew that I had this unbelievable love for the business. And when Todd Gordon, by the time he had started up the TWA and he was running out of Philadelphia, they were routinely bringing in Eddie and Doug Gilbert and sometimes Tommy. So it was like, anything I could do to help out, anytime I could referee or even collect ring jackets, just to be around and to establish like a solid friendship. And not only that, I was, the world's biggest mark for Eddie, and he knew it. But he never took advantage of it. He just kind of pawned off some knowledge on me, and just enough for me to know without being smart to everything. And even Eddie didn't prepare me for how Memphis was going to be.
I can only imagine, because I was watching, I think it was last night, I found on YouTube, there's a match with you and Lawler on USWA TV.
Yeah, the old Memphis territory.
Yeah, in like the little studio.
Yeah. People wouldn't believe the name wrestlers that came through that little studio. But that was the format. They taped live on Saturday morning, Saturday night you were in Nashville. It was just the same formula. They would bicycle that tape around. So you had Monday night Mid-South Coliseum, and then Tuesday night Evansville, Indiana, which would be playing a week back from when the tape bicycled over there. And then Evansville, Indiana on Wednesdays. Basically you were hitting the same towns every single week on that bicycle. Nashville, Saturday nights, and then all the spot shows around the area that they ran. So it took me a while to kind of get used to that, but 3 years straight out to shoot in the old Memphis territory, it's like you smartened up fast to how things work down there. But I think either I ignored the advice or I was really cocky at the time when people were telling me what to do when you go into someplace new. And by then, I felt like I had like 4 or 5 years experience. So I thought, like, who are these guys that never made it anywhere trying to tell me what to do? So, yeah, Memphis was just a harsh reality when I went down there. And, everybody, you could take open shots at the Yankee from Jersey who's given a full-time job in the old Memphis territory. It's like, this guy doesn't belong here. He's lucky to be here. He's just a mark that, happens to know how to wrestle a little bit.
Now, with you being down there, is that how it parlayed into you doing stuff for WWF back at that time?
Yeah, because downtown Bruno, Harvey Whippleman, when Buddy Wayne quit doing the ring, they dropped off the responsibility on Bruno, who had a full-time job with the WWF by then, and he still does to this day. So Chief Jay Strongbow would go to him and be like, we need a bunch of guys. And I remember one time, just not for nothing, they had chosen this job guy that was really bad. And I go, why on planet Earth is he going to surface on WWF TV? And Bruno goes, they came to me. They told me they needed 3 black guys, maybe a Latino, and like 6 or 7 like white guys. And then I started to kind of I was like, oh, all right. But yeah, Bruno would always have us go up there. You know, it's like he would. There's one where you see like me, Ken Raper, and TD Steele like carrying Mabel to the ring on his throne after the whole King of the Ring deal. It's like stuff like that, or when Steve Austin beat us all up at Muggs Bar off of Raleigh LaGrange in Memphis.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It's like ridiculous stuff like that. They would kind of joke and call us the Run-In and Bump Crew. There's the one where we came out as security back in 2008 when Shawn Michaels super kicked us all on Raw.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was always something there was always like extra kind of work that you could do. And even guys that were being pushed in Memphis were like, yeah, I'll be a job guy. Shit, $250 and catered food. Why not?
And you get your face on national TV.
Yeah, and you know, at least for bragging rights, you could say I work with that guy or this guy, or it pays way better than the Indies did. And who knows? It's like jumping ahead a bit. Like I had done a sunset flip on Diesel. You know, one of the matches on there, and like years later, WCW they had me and Bobby Walker like wrestling against High Voltage, and he was like, he could do a sunset flip, and I was like blown away. I was like, how the fuck does Kevin Nash remember that shit? For him to even take the fucking time to, because I remember, because you know it was the first time I ever like picked someone up, kind of slid to the middle of the ring, picked him up by the throat, and then gave him a big back bump. I was like, how the fuck does he remember that?
Yeah, yeah, especially considering all the stuff that went on back then.
Yeah, for him to take out his time, as big of a star as he was, it was just kind of mind-blowing. But it reminds you that it's a small world after all. Like, I remember the Memphis job guy, Tony Williams, had one hell of a match with Steve Austin. And everybody knew that Tony had the kind of like talent to pull it off. But I mean, he was always overlooked for his lack of size. But it was just like, you feel kind of good inside for him because you're like, it's one of the Tennessee boys that are just a job guy that's getting ahead and looking good out there.
No, yeah. Did your back hurt after trying to carry Mabel on that freaking throne? Jesus Christ.
Well, there was 4 of us, but, you know, it's like...
I know, but still, my God, that was a huge man.
Yeah. I remember there was one time, it was St. Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view where they called a bunch of job guys down there, and then they didn't have anything for us, but they had to like pay us anyway because they called us down there. And it was like they had the entire thing where I think it was like pre-show or whatever. It was like Mick Foley's brawling with The Rock, and they're like, you guys just make a bunch of noise out here. And we're like, like, why did we all get dressed up in our gear? And they're like, he's going to hit him with a plant. We want you guys to make some noise in the back. We're like, all right.
It's like, you're going to pay me for this? Okay.
It's kind of ridiculous on the surface, but, you know, you take it and you do it. You make the most of it, I guess. Yeah, at least you get your face seen, you know.
Now, did you, when you I know you did stuff for WWF, but you mentioned WCW. Did you do more than just that one thing with them with High Voltage?
No, it was like a handful of tapings. There was one where, you know, Benoit beat the shit out of me.
Oh, God.
It was like, that was a match with Dean Malenko. Just like jobs here and there. It was nothing like, you know, it's kind of cool that I could kind of piece together a lot of the stuff that I did. And in a highlight reel, it looks pretty neat. But, I mean, at the time, I was more about, hey, a free flight and $250. Like, cool with me. And actually, it was Brickhouse Brown that kept calling Kevin Sullivan trying to get in there. So, I mean, it just, I guess by proxy, you know, Brickhouse like, yeah, I'm using my buddy's phone, man. He'll come on in too. And There's a really good squash with Brickhouse. It's not even a squash. It's actually a good match with Brickhouse Brown and Triple H. And Brickhouse Brown's wearing my boots. So I remember, like, right after I wrestled, he's like, "Man, your boots look nice, man. Let me use them shits."
I'm going to have to look this up and see if it's on YouTube.
Oh, which? The one with Brickhouse and Triple H?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just watched it not that long ago. Because, you know, it's like, man, this has been a horrible recent few weeks, and the last couple months have just been, you know, and so many times people want me to go on record and talk about Brian and what happened, and wait till all that surfaces, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Brickhouse Brown, it's like, I don't want to be the guy in misery that keeps dwelling on the death of Pogo, and, you know, it's bad enough living through it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, life goes on. So, you know, either you move with it or you're stuck in the past. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't want to be that whiny guy that's always like, "Oh man, Eddie's gone." It's like, you know, you eventually got to work through it. Just own the bitterness, but work through it.
No, yeah, that's fair. Now, what I wanted to know is, how did the whole you getting over in Japan come about? Because it was like 94, right?
Yeah, when Eddie Gilbert and them needed somebody for Wing. What I didn't know at the time was they needed somebody who was really going to just do the jobs because him or Doug weren't going to do the jobs as monsters. And so when I started to get a foot in the door over there, Eddie had his falling out with Wing. So, of course, when I arrived, they're like, "Eddie's not here anymore. There's nobody, there's nobody there to look out for me." First thing they did was send me they were trying to work out a deal with PWC, Pro Wrestling Crusaders, which was owned by George and Kenji Takano. George Takano was the Cobra in the WWF back in the day.
Yeah.
One hell of a goddamn wrestler. And so they sent me, I thought I was going over there, under some kind of push or, hey, even as myself. And, you know, I knew going in, I was like, whatever they throw at you, make the most of it because you're lucky to be over here on another man's dollar. They sent me there. Those guys had a working agreement because Go Ryuma was doing a lot of their main events, and so was Goro Surumi and his son. And Goro Surumi and his son owned IWA Kokushiya, which IWA Kokusai was using basically the same talent on top. So with the IWA Kokusai people, of course, they would bring in Go Ryuma, and Go Ryuma was the most famous out of them all. And Ryuma owned Purisu Baka. It's been called Go Gungden. It's been called Project X, Project Purisu, Purisu Baka, which translates to Pro Wrestling Idiot or Pro Wrestling Fool. All this stuff, you know, and Foley talks about him in his book too. But all the stuff that kind of sort of came to be, I was just willing to accept whatever they would do with me. And so it was like some nights when they couldn't get the regulars, you know, it was me as the White Mummy or me as one of the Uchu Power or Meijin, which is like outer space invaliant monster. Me, a guy named Koichiro Kimura, who has passed away from cancer, who, if you ever watched a Choke documentary about the Gracies, he's one of the guys that goes against Hoist Gracie. So it was like he was a hell of an amateur fighter, really, really schooled in martial arts. And a buddy of mine who eventually I got to really connect through the church with, Ichiro Yaguchi, who, the guy in Red and Black who teamed with Onita once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like me and him would tag up and be the Uchu Meijin Powers along with Koichiro Kimura. So it's like between those three promotions, and then you would find work in other independents that were starting up. And it's like Go Ryuma was one of the first guys to have a famous independent right before FMW. He owned Project Samurai. You know, he was always on the cusp of hanging out on the indies because he was too old at that point to work in New Japan and All Japan. He just kind of had a bad stigma from them. So it was like, you know, there was always like independence he was starting up. And with Goro Surumi around him, and regularly they were running shows with PWC that had its own dojo, the Takano brothers. It was like, you know, they had started up their wrestling in 93. So by the time 94 rolls around, I'm a foreigner with like 5 years experience, but, you know, they still felt that I was a young boy. I mean, I was only 20 years old anyway. And they were like, you're just going to have to learn Japanese style. And in my mind, I was like, but I want to do the ECW stuff, you know, because you remember ECW was like the big thing. Around 94 was really coming up.
Oh, absolutely, because I'm about an hour, maybe even less from Philly. So like when I would watch ECW, I always felt like that was like our company, our promotion. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. It's what you gravitate most toward because not only is it local, but it's also like, you know, larger than life. I mean, these guys were on Sports Channel and you were watching them take off and, you know, they had that buzz going for them. So, which, I mean, they were actually just a low rent FMW if you look at it. Like,
No, they really were.
Yeah, because with the influence of Sabu and everything else, you know, you could tell Paul Lee was going for that alternative, which is exactly what FMW was compared to All Japan and New Japan.
Yeah, it was basically the same thing. He was giving his audience, you know, something completely different that, you know, neither company in this, you know, the two big companies in the States at the time weren't doing.
Yeah. To get back to like a little bit more detail, it's like with IWA Kokusai, with Surumi and his son, and Pyorisu Baka with Go Ryuma and Pro Wrestling Crusaders, PWC. There's an entire like hour-long YouTube thing where it's called Cosmic Powers for some reason. But Uchu Meijin Power, you know, roughly translates to outer space alien power. So with that, Onita, because the first couple of shows that he did before the advent of FMW and Pioneer Sensei was the name of Surumi's promotion. It was the name of, you know, this was like one of the first like independents to get really to going against like the established, you know, All Japan and New Japan. There was always UWFI, but that was more shoot, you know, related. There was IWE, which of course broke off and then became New Japan and All Japan and that kind of thing. But the thing was, we were invited because Onita always liked Go Ryuma, you know, even though Ryuma got into a lot of trouble later on in life. He always like felt a thing for him. So he would always have us come in and be like guests on FMW shows. So, I mean, that's pretty much where that connection came from. But I never felt that I was ever going to work my way up to any kind of main event status. You know, I was busy being the White Mummy, or I was busy being one of the Uchu Meijin Powers, or, you know, one of the Commandos, or just countless things that you could do under a mask.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I know you were and are a big Onita fan. What was it like for you personally to be able to come back home to the States with him last year when he hasn't been here in, God, like 20 plus years?
Yeah, the whole thing leading up to it was it seemed like every day. And, you know, later on, he had the time for the boys and he had the time for a guy like me. Back in 94 when we met him, we were just told, shake his hand and shake the FMW's roster's hands and get the hell out of there. Because you might say something that screws it up. Just be humble, be quiet. That's what I was told by a translator. And I was like, okay. But as years went on, you know, eventually I wrestled for Onita Pro and Onita's Project X. He came up with his own Project X promotion. And when he started doing some of the independents, and in the year 2000, Pogo was using him on a lot of his stuff. So it was like, you know, I established a friendship with him, but the friendship really didn't kick in until like 2017 was like the big year, because I would see him every night and I was working with him almost every single night in main events. So it was like going into it, I told him, I was like, you know, I already knew who was booked out there. It was Hideki Hosaka and Ichiro Yaguchi was already booked in the 6-man because, going into it, I knew it was going to be a 6-man. Onita hasn't done a singles in years. And Onita said, look, God forbid something happens. And sure enough, a week before, Hosaka breaks his jaw in 2 different places and he's scheduled to do double duty. So, I told Onita, I go, well, if I'm on book, man, I don't want to just be hanging around. And he goes, no, you're with us. And he goes, what are you thinking? He's like, come on. He goes, and it was kind of a no-brainer. It was like, you're right, I have to go. And he's like, look, you could always bring your merchandise and everything. He goes, people are fans of it. And I go, yeah, I just didn't want to be that awkward guy hanging around. And he was like, you're the one that told me about DJ. And, I showed him a video in Memphis. I brought in, for my own promotion back in 2009, I brought in Sammy Callahan, Joe Gacy, and DJ Hyde. And I was using a lot of the CZW guys, so I became familiar with all those guys. But, Onita goes, I arrive in America, and he goes, just send something to Tadashi Tanaka to let them know that we're coming to American soil and that our feud is over. That, that you're FMW and you're here with us and you fought with us and we fought against each other and we are FMW. So that was the whole thing around it. And I was like, I'll gladly go in there and represent it because I've given my life for it and I've damn near died for it. And Onita's like, you can have a great time anyway. I go, I'm going to have a great time because I'm watching you guys on American soil. And he was like, that's what I wanted to hear. He goes, you can't ever think that you're not with us. Yeah, I know. But I finally got to experience what I had experienced. I got to see a lot of people experience the same thing of just hanging out with Onita, getting to talk with him, get a picture with him. And, I got a guy like Bull James who I've known since his rookie year. And he was like, I can go back there. I can meet Onita. And I go, come on, he's my boss. Come on. Come with me, man. And it was really cool watching him and Ichiro Yaguchi going back and forth. I was like, I never thought I would have seen this moment. It just looks so out of place for them and Pandita to be on American soil, bullshit with American people.
Yeah, I'll never. That's one of those moments I'll never forget where, because you remember, they had the where Onita was signing and taking pictures before the show. So I finally get up to it, and he brought the Explosion World Title with him, which is the heaviest fucking belt
goddamn belt you've ever felt in your life. He goes to hand it to me before he went out there. I go, I've already got a flag and chainsaw, man. That thing is fucking heavy. And he goes, well, you were a contender for it. Why don't you just walk out there with it? And I go, I'm going to hang around my neck. And Pandita just sheepishly comes up. He goes, all right, I'll haul it out there. And I'm like, yes. I was like, that chainsaw weighs less than that thing does.
That thing has to weigh at least 50 pounds.
And the WEW tag team titles that they made are the exact same material, only it's broken off into 3 different pieces. So I would laugh at Hasagawa. That was one of the light heavyweight champions because, all the belts are made all together. And I would laugh at Hasagawa and be like, light heavyweight title, that thing weighs 30 friggin' pounds. You're going to have to haul that with you everywhere, man. And he was like, oh, God, I didn't even think about that. And I go, good. Imagine you had a gimmick like mine where you got to haul your fucking chainsaw through a heavy-ass chainsaw through all the train stations to a bus stop or wait for a guy to come pick you up and all that,
I'll tell you a quick funny
on top of all the other T-shirts and everything else I haul with me.
I'll tell you a quick funny story. And he put this story on Facebook because we're friends. There's an independent wrestler in the States named Mr. Grimm that his thing is he has almost like a Money in the Bank briefcase. But in the briefcase is a body bag, and he puts people in the body bag, after he wins, like The Undertaker used to do years ago. Well, he put up on his Facebook, he recently went to Mexico for DTU. And he said he was in customs, and he gets the short straw where they want to look through all his stuff. And he said he opened up and saw the briefcase, opened up the briefcase, saw the body bag, just closed it, and the girl was like, just go.
Yeah, I've heard the name before. When I See, we did the entire contrived angle where, you know, I win the title, or I win a title in America, and then I wound up bringing that belt with me. And, you know, the WWS World Heavyweight Championship and everything. And it was like, I got to Canadian Customs, and once I saw the belts, the guys were like taking pictures with it. And I'm like, can I go now? You know, it's like I've been there for like 90 minutes. I had Vern Siebert, the old wrestler from Al Tomko's Vancouver promotion. And Vern's like waiting and waiting and waiting on me. And I'm like, these guys are taking a bunch of like marked pictures with the belt. Like, I got to go. And in the meantime, there's some other guy that's like this Indian guy, was working at Customs. And he's just not amused by all this. And he was like, keep your hands out of your pockets. And I'm like, look, man, I got to go. I've been here for 90 minutes. And you guys are like going through my boots and knee pads. And it's like, there's my working papers right there. Can't you just let me be?
That's crazy. I got a quick Onita story for you. When he came to America last year, I don't want to name the indie guy just because I don't know if he wants his name put out there, but he told me this story was one of the funniest things. He was working his shoot job that day. So he told DJ, he's like, hey, I'm going to be late. I'm working my shoot job. I won't be there for call time. So DJ's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. So he shows up, he said, and of course, he said, Onita's outside chain smoking. And he says, I can't remember what he told me he said to him exactly in Japanese, but it translated to something like, welcome to America, or something like that. He said,
Kimashita,
yeah. So he tells Onita this, and he says, Onita looks at him, and he points his finger at him, and he goes, you're late. You're late. And he goes, oh no. And he's like trying to explain to him that he got the okay to show up late. And he said Onita just came up to him and put his arm around him and like, it's okay.
Yeah, you know, he didn't sleep for like 2 days going into that.
Really?
Yeah, when he got to Hong Kong, nobody in Hong Kong speaks any English and don't speak any Japanese.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I had a connecting flight there. Like the very last time I went, I had a connecting flight, and Hong Kong is like the most miserable place. Just to go outside and have a cigarette, you have to like get your passport stamped and everything. And both Onita and his old lady. And then he had told me because you know Hosaka's got so much pride, he didn't want to admit to being in any pain. But it turns out, you know, when the turbulence was kicking in from the airplane, his jaw was broken in 2 places. Not only that, he was wrestling on his birthday, pulling double duty, and I'm watching this guy do a Rana from the top rope. And then I'm reading, or I'm hearing the criticism of people on the line, like, couldn't they have brought the best of their FMW guys? And I'm like, name one. Because if you think, you know, Masato Tanaka's got the time to take away from his busy schedule, it's like, you got another thing coming. It was a miracle that Onita was able to get away from FMW just for 3-4 days. That in itself is a small miracle because he's in high demand all over. I mean, we went from one side of Japan to the other with his retirement tour, and it was me and him every single night. So I already knew how tired he was. I never wanted to really bother him. But there's so much more that goes into the story of the once in a lifetime. I mean, standing there watching Matt Tremont outside, like straight out of the hospital and like dry heaving outside. And then, you know, I'm outside with Onita, and I'm not going to say who, but there was some people that were on the outs of CCW, and I would catch him out of the corner of my eye, and I'd bring him, and I'd be like, hey, you want me to, you know, here's Onita. And I would tell Onita a little bit about him and stuff, you know. I was like, I know it's a special thing for people to, because he's never here. You know, I mean, I wanted people to feel the same way that I felt around him for the last, you know, 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
Every time I've been around him, it's a, you know, he has that certain mystique. And like I sent you the pictures and videos and stuff like that I send you. It's not a way to put myself over. It's a way to say that, hey, this really happened. Here's a picture. I was there. I'm in this picture. It's like, I think I sent you the one where Onita's driving, you know, yeah, just randomly. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I can pick this guy's brain. I can say anything I want to him. And he's so much goddamn fun. You know, you get to we would get to all these like stops along the road and everything. And I love this. He always had like the world's biggest sense of humor. You'd see Ultraman, you know, yeah. and you put your money, you put your yen into the thing, and the Ultraman guy, he does this like striking pose, and it's this giant like statue. And there's Onita doing the same pose, and he's like, "Ah!" I'm like, man, how old are you, man? He's like being around a little kid. You know, he just never loses any kind of so much charisma. We would walk into another like truck stop. It's like they have the little places to eat over there, and I'll never forget. Like he picked up one of those giant Chinese woks, and he's like, "Dong!" And then I was like, all right. So I wait for the next stop. I picked up like this. They had this like bamboo stick there, and I was like, "Dong!" When I go to, because every time he calls the comeback, he's like, "Dong, dong, dong." He would always say the same thing. So then every time he would walk in there, I'd pick up another object, and I'd go to swing, and I'd be like, "Dong!" And he would start laughing. And then one night he just goes, always dong me. Why? And I go, "Motherfucker, every night you always dong, dong, dong me." And I started pointing out all the parts on my head that were cut. He just started cracking up laughing.
That's funny.
But, yeah, just like a charisma out of him, just talk about personality. It's like, I remember sending the picture back to his girlfriend. I go, "Look," and it's me in full gimmick with Onita's mom. And she's like, "Oh, he's going to love this," because if there's one thing, man, Onita loves his mom. It kind of harkens back to our discussion at the beginning of this. Like, I can't really respect somebody that doesn't love their mom. It's like, it's your mom,
Absolutely.
She would call him sporadically while he was on the road. He bought her a restaurant to run and that kind of thing. I mean, she still looks out for him. That's her little baby. That's her only kid. It's like, the guy, he lost his father at a young age. He was supporting the entire family on his wages from pro wrestling.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So everything that he did was pretty much, got to survive, got to take care of mom. You got to respect that.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Watching her in no working shape or form, just with her hands together, praying that he's not going to get hurt in his final match. And then how it all came to be, I just felt a tap on my shoulder, and they're like, "Oh, you're in the way of the shot." I turned around, and his mom was sitting in the chair. I'm like, "Oh, my God." And then, afterwards, I poured my heart out. I'm like, "You have no idea," telling her in Japanese. I'm like, "You have no idea how many lives he's touched, and just what a great guy he is to me, and what a great guy he's been." I was like, and certain times I would wait for the right opportunity and ask him, like, what is it that you see in me, or why are you so nice to me? And he would tell me, guys in America did the same thing for me and Pogo, and we were less than nobody there. And I'm like, well, the only reason I'm somebody or anybody is because you two, I was floating around the independent scene over there for 6 years before Pogo pretty much took me, full blooded into his, up under his wing. So, I mean, it's once Pogo came up with the whole WWS thing that he's like, "You always got a home here. Like, other feds will come and go." And I remember Pogo telling me, he was like, "WWS won't last forever because, I'm not going to last forever." And I knew right then, I was like, bullshit. It's always, and to this day, they're still doing, Pogo memorial shows and Pogo forever. And he's still on all the posters. So it's like, the bunch of us at WWS realized that this guy kept us in work all these years, and we were able to get work from other independents because he was always there, going to bat for us. Anytime Pogo would go to do DDT or he'd go to do another independent, he would bring us with him. A bunch of us, if we weren't working, a regular job, which a lot of the natives over there do, he would always bring us all with him. It's a lot that we have to be thankful for. All because of him, and because of him, like, believing that, this crew of misfits that aren't signed to any of the big organizations over there, these are my people. They're with me.
Yeah, he saw something in you guys.
Yeah, and I mean, from the very first WWS card where I'm working like twice under a mask, and so is Takase, and then I look at it now, and Takase is he's been their heavyweight champion for the last 2.5 years. It's like, yeah, but that guy earned it. He was there from the very, very first card ever. You know, he was there for so many other, because Pogo had WWS, but he would also do like in fancy ballrooms with no ring and just on mats. He would do like a full wrestling card there. And then he had CPE, which is the same concept, but it's Miss Mongol does all the booking, and she would do the thing where the girls are in cat fights and trying to rip each other's clothes off. There was always, you know, there was always something. WWS had those three things going for it. They had their own stuff that they were doing with the ring, and then they had the CPE, cat fighting entertainment thing that they did like at least once a month. And then Pogo would run like a WWS house show under the same concept with no ring and like a really nice kind of upscale place. And they would like feed the fans. So the fans would be like watching and drinking alcohol as they were watching like two guys beat the living shit out of each other on gym mats. Yeah, it was like he was always able to make like those three things work every single month, you know, without a beat. He never missed one of those, you know. And Miss Mongol would keep a healthy stock of young girls that, you know, I mean, some of the matches would be like first one to strip nude is the loser. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So it'd just be these crazy like small independent shows, and people were paying like $30 or $50 for a seat, you know, just to watch this. And you would see all the wrestlers get together and like, you know, put all the food in different plates and everything, you know, and put out like programs that came with the purchase of a ticket to like WWS shows. You know, it was like a way to build up toward the big show that he was doing with WWS, which, I mean, they had like 4 big shows each year, including their anniversary show. And they still follow the concept of those 4 big shows. They fill it up like this year we're in Shimabashi, which is like dead heart of Tokyo. And even Pogo's ex-girlfriend, mother of his kids, would tell him, you should run in Tokyo. But he always loved running in the Guma Prefecture, which is like 2 different prefectures away from Tokyo, because he grew up there and it was easy for him to sell tickets to. Anytime he wanted to put up a ring and do 2,000-3,000 people with Onita on top, he did that until the day he died.
Wow.
It's like I established such a loyalty to it because, I mean, I look at the name wrestlers from Japan that I got to wrestle in like 6-mans or tags or even singles. And then he puts me at the helm of his ship and makes me his heavyweight champion. It was like, I have a brand new level of loyalty to this product. I mean, he let me go out there. No mask, no nothing, just as Tony Myers, his heavyweight champion. So, really got fortunate, really got lucky that somebody took that much of a liking to me, that thought that much of me, to put me at the helm of their ship and say, this is our champion.
That's awesome, man. Now, what I wanted to get into is how you got passed down into the Leatherface thing and then became Chainsaw Tony Myers.
I love the whole entire, and I love the entire storyline with Onita, and it added, going from Leatherface to Chainsaw Tony, it just added another layer. So I was able to do yet another tour with Onita on top, and him saying, I'm going to rip that mask off and show everybody, you are who I say you are. And he was like, I have wrestled you countless times in Pogo's WWS. You're not fooling anybody. You're the only person here with that hair. You're the only person here with the contacts, the bright blue eyes. It's you. And me doing the old Memphis territory gimmick of, if it's me, I'll leave this country if you can unmask me and pull the mask off. But it's not me. You know, and then added like a brand new dimension too, because we had to do something, because all last tour, that's all he did was beat me every night in main events. So we had to add another layer to it. But rewind back to 2003, that was the debut of, and Pogo wanted to go a different direction and call it Sin Leather. But then, you know, fans would just, Laserface, you know. It was difficult getting Kirshner, because Kirshner was the original Leatherface, was settling down in a job where he was like truck driving. First he was bouncing out in Florida, then truck driving, and then he started like family life. So it was kind of difficult for them to bring him in, and then they would have to find him enough work to warrant, you know, paying what, $2 or $3 grand for a plane ticket. So then, you know, Mike Patterson, second one, they decided, hey, you know, he's got a Japanese wife. She's probably going to want it. And they went that angle. They went that route of telling him, hey, come back to Japan. And then eventually, you know, he was starting up a farm with his brother outside of, Winnipeg, which is like a 24-hour drive from Vancouver. So they couldn't fly him out of anywhere, and they just found it more and more increasingly difficult because he was starting up his own business. So Pogo's like, you know, he goes, you're only maybe an inch or two shorter than Kirshner. And he's like, maybe 3-4 inches Patterson's got on you. He's like, but you guys are built the exact same. He was like, just keep working on your upper body. And he goes, because, you know, hauling around that chainsaw is going to be a bitch. And I don't think anybody realizes until they've actually swung one over their head and done the whole dance with it, how fast it'll blow you up. So 2001, Pogo wrestles Leather and the second one, and they wound up selling out like Kumagaya. And they were going to go to Kagahara with the same thing, but they sold out the whole bottom half of Kumagaya, and that was like 3,500 people. For a tiny little independent, Pogo's like, we got to keep the fire burning. Well, what happened was then he started having all the difficulties of bringing back another Leather. So there I was dwelling around there, and he was like, let's get you booked in Mexico. When you're there, pick up a mask. This way you know you have it. This way you know you're comfortable wrestling in it. He's like, somebody from here can make you up one. He was like, but you got to go away for a little bit. I mean, everybody's seen you nonstop at this point. 2001 with all the WWS shows and stuff we were doing. So, you know, went out to the hardware store, and Pogo's like, it's a hell of an investment, man. He goes, the chainsaw that I want to give you is like $450. So he's, you know, and I told him, I was like, well, I'm paying for the apron, and I'm going to shit up my pants and a brand new dress shirt and a suit jacket. You know, so. And then from there, I just did nothing but study their mannerisms and everything else. So it was like, my ultimate goal is to combine the two of them. If I could combine the charisma of Kirshner, along with Rick Patterson's moveset, where he's doing all the moonsaults and everything else, I was like, long as I could do that and just have that level of charisma where I'm just not going out there like a zombie, where I'm going into it and I'm, you know, really into the gimmick and everything. And down to the facial expressions, down to interacting with referees, the guy you're wrestling, playing to the camera and to the people. It's exhausting, but, you know, it's your ultimately, if you think you're passionate, you're going to do it anyway. So, you know, the idea eventually, you know, he came to me after about 1.5 years. He went back and forth on it because he was trying like hell to get the other two to come in. And eventually he just put it on me. And whenever the other one, when the original Leatherface would surface, or even the second one, Rick Patterson, he was like, that's the gimmick that they're best known for. And I'd be like, hey, I'll be on the undercard, man. It doesn't bother me. But eventually it just morphed into full-time me in WWS as Sin Leather. And that was Pogo's way of separating the two. Because he's like, they've already seen the first two. And then it was Onita combined with Pogo that came up with the idea of like a trilogy. Like, you'll be the final Leatherface. Like, after you, the gimmick is dead. He's like, what are we going to do? And keep introducing new Leatherface? Like, the original is, you know, 61. That speaks for itself. And then, you know, the second one, as busy as he stays out on this farm that he has with his brother that he owns. It's like this gorgeous ranch. You would have to see this thing to believe it. But combined with that and the fact that he's like, what, 58, 59 now, and he's winding things down as well. So they just felt that if they had their own that was there in Japan, and, you know, that slowly people would not buy into it, but people would eventually accept that that's me. His whole idea behind making Tony Myers a champion was he doesn't need a gimmick. Like, this guy has put in enough work by himself, you know. And that was to say too, hey, you get your face seen with the heavyweight title. It's like, no, you didn't need a gimmick to get this. this is your ultimate reward for how loyal you've been to the company all these years.
That's cool, man. Now it's funny you had posted this question on my Facebook page and I figured I should ask it since you did a lot of this as the Leatherface. How are you not dead?
Just passion over common sense.
Because I watched that video that you put up. You can, if people want to check it out, you can find it on Tony's YouTube. Some of those exploding bat shots were like really like difficult to watch.
Disturbing. It's like, well, you think about all the other crazy horse crap that I've been through, and yeah, it got to the point where it's like one of the buttons from my shirt. This is like really graphic. The plastic button on my shirt had gotten so hot from the explosion that it just like kind of fused to the skin of my stomach. And it was bad enough that Onita went to cover me, and Onita was like, ah! And then he kind of like rocked back for a second. Then you see him just like cover me with his two hands, and he was going, ah! He was grabbing his stomach. He was like, shit's burning me, man. Burning you.
Yeah, well, it's bad if he's doing that.
I thought one of the funniest things, it got to the point where it was like night after night after night of me and him wrestling in main events. So I started being like a wise ass. Every time he would pin me, I'd go, wild thing. And then the next night I'd go, wild thing. You keep retiring. I was trying to get him to laugh, and you could hear him laughing, but he wasn't like, his face wasn't showing it.
That's funny.
You'd hear him belly laugh and him just like, enough of that shit.
I think I've told you.
I started yelling at him in English, and it was so funny because, he knew that he needed to brush up on his English. So night after night that we'd either hang out or we'd just like wrestle each other, and he would be working on his English. I would just say stuff to screw with him in the ring. It was like one time I'm like picking him up for a slam, and I was like, my neighbor's dog has a 12-inch clit. And he goes, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like in the middle of me picking him up and slamming him, it's like, I was like, if I could make him laugh, at least I could get a laugh out of him.
Oh, dude, he has like the funniest laugh ever. It reminds me of a James Bond villain.
You'd have to ask Tremont about this. We were leaving I pointed out to Tremont, because Onita was like incognito wearing glasses, but you could just see by the looks on people's faces, they were like, their eyes lit up. And they were like, oh my God. This is all of us walking through the pachinko hall. And I pointed out to Tremont. And then later on, we were leaving. We're walking out to where, down into like by the train station.
Yeah.
We were leaving out of the buffet to go to the pachinko place. And, I'm sorry. It was afterwards. We went to go back to like this really exquisite hotel that you got a reservation for and everything. Ate this really nice buffet, and I point out to Tremont, and I said out loud, I go, look at how the people are looking at him. And Onita latches onto it, and he goes, yeah? And I go, come on. I go, I'm pointing it out to him so he can see it. And then Onita's like, he just starts going, I'm famous! I'm famous! More people are looking at him like he's crazy. But, it's stuff like that, like, countless times we would be out on the road, long drive, and you would just see people sheepishly come up to him like, if you could please sign this. And oh my God, if I could take a picture of you. And, here's a guy getting interrupted from his hot meal, and he would just smile and be like, all right, and it was like, then he would hearken back to, he was like, when I was 15 years old and I was breaking in, I always wished it would be a day like this. And I'm like, yeah, but you get this all the time. And he goes, yeah. And not a day goes by I'm not thankful for it. And
That's
then
awesome. It's funny you mentioned that. I have in my bedroom. You remember the real big posters they were selling at Once in a Lifetime? It's the one that he's like wrapped up in barbed wire.
Yeah, where he's like halfway hunched over. He's got one hand that's like way down below his waist and the other one kind of cocked up.
Yeah. I have that framed in my bedroom. He signed it and Tremont signed it, and it's framed in my bedroom.
That's what I wanted to tell people about, like, something with once in a lifetime. Like as much criticism and scrutiny as it came under, I was like, if you went out there and you didn't have a good time, I knew people that got posters and stuff of theirs signed because other people brought it there with it. You know, it's like if anybody could get the same kind of feeling that I did the first time I was around him or the first time that I wrestled him, and it seemed like everybody that came there that night got that experience. And like, come on, let's be honest, man. You know, it's like as much money as I've gotten so lucky to earn or anything like that, enough to, you know, put my kids through college and buy a house overseas. And as fortunate as I've been in this lifetime, you know, I got there because I'm just a lucky super fan myself. So, I mean, this was the day for us all to tell him, yeah, I'm a fucking mark for you, dude. Like, come on. Night after night after night, I went to wrestle the guy, and every time I heard Wild Thing hit, like goosebumps would raise up on my arm. That's night after night.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was going to say, you know, like, as wrestling fans, some of us are, like, jaded from seeing, like, everything that we have. But I got to tell you, that night when his music hit and Matt's music hit, I had, like, goosebumps.
Yeah. To show you how loud it was or just how vocal and into it people were, I had the chainsaw running. I couldn't hear my own chainsaw.
Oh, wow.
That's something. You can hear, like, there's a video of Rob Feinstein following us, like, on the way out as me, Yaguchi, Pandita, Onita, and Osaka are headed out there. And, like, you know, it's funny. You see me at the curtain, and I'm like, I told Osaka, I'm like, you go first, dude. And he was like, oh, come on. I go, no, you. And, I mean, I'm revving up the chainsaw. You can't even hear it. I mean, you can hear it, but you can't hear it that loud. That's how loud it was in that place. That's like ridiculous, off the charts. And then coming out and hearing people chant FMW and hearing people chant Onita, it's like, good. Now you guys get to experience what I do every night of my life when I'm in the ring against this guy. And I remember, like, one of the guys ringside, they're like, I go, I'm going to get out of your way. I told the guy in the front row, I go, I'm going to get out of your way. And the guy's like, oh, man, shit, leather balls. Hey, man. And I remember glancing at the guy. I go, I'm just thankful it's not me taking an ass whooping in there this night from him.
That's funny. I don't know if you've ever seen...
And two nights later, we go for a house show for 0-1, and I turn on Onita after the match. Like, and it was so funny because one of the journalists pointed, they're like, nobody has ever interrupted him during what they call Onita Theater, his post-match interview. He goes, nobody's ever attacked him and cut him off during that. And I'm like, you know, and then in the post-match or in the post thing, you know, after I was done teaming up with him and Yaguchi and Osaka, you know, I pointed out, I was like, you seem to forget, man, I'm American after all. I was like, and not only that, I go, biggest match in history of FMW, of, you know, we're family, we're together. And you got me sitting on the sidelines with Pandita waving a fucking flag. I was like, I took it as a slap in the face. And it was so funny because, like, Osaka sheepishly comes to me and he goes, you don't really feel that way, do you? And I was like, what do you believe that shit? I was like, what do you, Mark? You believe that shit? There's during us wrestling, it was like Utsunomiya was the name of the place that wrestled in a tag match against Onita with Osaka taking the Mr. Pogo 2 name that Pogo had given him when he was in his Pogo Army days, going against him and Naoshi Sano, which is to this day like one of my all-time favorite matches. And I thought the funniest thing was right during it, you know, like he would get so excited, he'd just start pulling me by the hair, and I'd be like, oh, get off my hair, you know, like I'd be pissed off because it's my real hair. And he'd be like, oh, shit, I forgot. So he'd start pulling me by the side of the mask. And I remember making a comeback on him, and I'm like drilling him. I was like, I've fucking had enough of you. And I start choking him. And in perfect English, he goes, I've had enough of you too. And he swats away my hand and just starts giving me forearms to the face. And I remember it was like at one point in time, I was like, I should ask him, like, dude, you don't really think I've had enough of you, man? I can't get enough.
That's great. I don't know if you saw this. There was, and I still watch it to this day. there was a hype video that CZW made for it. They put it out probably about a week or two before
Is it
Once
the
in a
Dream?
Lifetime.
Is it
And
the Dream On one with Tremont?
no, it's a different one. I think the artist's name is Kesha, and it's the song "Praying." I'll have to send it to you.
I would have to see that.
Yeah, it's really really well done.
I know that the Dream On one with Tremont,
Yes.
you see him in the store, and then you see him with his arm in a sling, and he's flipping through the DVDs. I got goosebumps. And then it was like, to show you how special like Once in a Lifetime was, like I got goosebumps watching it. I was like, I love this video because I had seen it before then. And then the opening chords of Onita's music, I'm like, holy shit. And like I said, there's the video of us going out there and Feinstein shooting it with his own, with his phone. And you hear Feinstein, as soon as he heard Wild Thing coming up, you hear him go, here we go. He already felt what we were all feeling, like, holy shit, we finally get to do this in America. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this. I'm trying to remember his name. He's a really famous podcaster. Was there like right along the aisle, and he's a huge Onita fan. I'm trying to remember his name. He's on WWE's on their pay-per-views talking.
Oh shit.
Sam Roberts.
Sam Roberts, the guy with the fro.
I call him Sideshow Bob.
Yeah, it blew that guy's mind. And I remember seeing Joey Janela back there and going, hey man, this ain't Banditos, man. I guess we've come a long way. And he goes, this what they got you doing tonight? And I go, Nick, I've been leather since '03, man. This is not just tonight. Like, we've had an entire war over there. And I was like, man, you're doing good enough these days. I ain't going to bore you with any of the shit that we've been doing. He was like, no, man. He's like, he's like, look at all those people out there. I'm like, this is incredible. Like, people say what they want about the criticism. And it was like, they failed to realize that in the post-match, Tremont got his ultimate goal. He got his tour of Japan.
Yeah.
He got the main event in Japan against Onita. That was like that kid's ultimate goal.
And he got his jacket.
Yeah, and it's like, doesn't anybody feel good for, like, this is all about Tremont. It's like, as big of a fan as you want to think you are of his, the only reason that he, or anybody else for that matter, is really doing death matches because Onita is the one that invented all this shit to begin with. It's like, how could you have such criticism? Yeah, it was turned into a 6-man. It was like, there's 10 million reasons why. It's, do we overanalyze that? Or I just look at it and go, hey, I think everybody had a great time.
I was going to say, just be happy for what it is or what it was,
Yeah, when you got at the end of the show, Onita beating or welcoming Tremont into the FMW family, saying you're now one of us. You want this this bad? Are you going to give it everything you got? You're going to pledge company loyalty? Well, here we go. It's me versus you overseas. Like, to me, that was just a moment that captured everything. Like, Tremont ultimately got his goal. He got to wrestle Onita. I thought one of the funnier things, too, was just pointing out, like, doing all the night after night things with Nozawa. Nozawa one night kind of looks around and he goes, Odaiba, we did like 3,000 or 4,000 people there. And he goes, man, look at those people. A lot of good crowd. Nozawa just goes, well, man, I'm nervous. Like, this is Nozawa. He's wrestled Onita 10 million times. Like, and I go, yeah, me too. I always am. Like, no matter what, every single night that we've wrestled him, and it's been hundreds of times for both me and Nozawa, especially Nozawa, because he was wrestling Onita all the way through when I left, and even when I came back, he was still my partner too. And I'm like, did you ever get tired of wrestling each other? I would just joke, and he would be like, oh man, I'm feeling nervous for some reason tonight. I don't know why. I go, yeah, me too. Like, it's one of those things to say, like, no matter how many matches we have with this guy, it's still Onita. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I had a guy, a fellow podcaster, because I interviewed Abyss and Rosemary and Crazy Steve this past weekend, which was a really cool deal. And he goes, "Do you ever get nervous?" And I said, "Listen." I was like, "I'm always nervous." I said, or I'm excited or whatever. I said, when you stop feeling that, something's wrong.
Yeah. It's just too many times I'll be like ready to go out, and it's always like it's the best, yet it's the worst feeling because you're like, man, I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack. I'm getting so like every time before I would go out there, like I remember Mama Sasaki, Mr. Ganasuke, and Matsudo Tanaka were all just standing there watching me drink like it's like 3/4 of a liter of coffee. It's just a ritual before I would go out because you got to be so fidgety. Yeah, you got to be so fidgety. So they watch me like nurse and drink on water, and then they would just see me like pound away at this thing of coffee. And Tanaka's like, "How do you not get blown up drinking all that?" Like, he's like, "Don't you know, man? It makes you dehydrate." And I'm like, "I don't know. I've just grown so tolerant to it, you know." And not only that first 5 minutes going out there chasing people everywhere, like you got to have some level of commitment to the gimmick. You also have to have like some level of energy. I mean, I'm a 44-year-old grandfather. Like, you know, you just, it has to come from somewhere, and it just can't come naturally. So coffee is that extra kick that kind of drives me through. But and then not only that, it's like after the whole ring entrance and everything, I explained to you off the podcast that like sometimes it will be like, you know, either they want you to fuck with the people heavy, like go through all the seats, or they're like, just come to the ring. Either which way, you're putting everything you have into it. Because if I'm coming down the ring, I'm going to spin in a bunch of circles, do the leather dance, you know, and not mess with any people. But still, I'm putting everything I have into it with that chainsaw.
I was going to say, and people don't realize how physically taxing that is.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, the energy itself has to come from somewhere. You know, the extra kick of energy that it's going to take. You know, I make it a routine thing to nurse on coffee all day long. But wrestling-wise, I'll drink that first quarter of coffee on my way to the building. And because they sell it in like the liter bottles. And it only comes out to like 70 yen a piece, which is like less than $1 here.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always load up on those things. And it's just, to me, it's just that extra kick. You know, there's no way it's going to come naturally. Not only that, a match on top of it where everything has to be fidgety. Everything has to be 100 miles an hour. It's Japan. There's no looking back. So many times in there, I'll remind myself, I'm like, you're in Japan. You better step it the hell up.
Yeah,
Like,
better bring your A game.
Yeah, and like there's so much in between that goes on. It's like even in death matches, there's a lot of elbow drops, knee lifts, shining wizards, suplexes, arm drags, hip tosses. That's not just deathmatch stuff where I'm just stabbing somebody with something. You know, I'm wrestling Louis, and I'm doing the suplex with the roll through, and still doing the moonsault and all that other stuff. The DDT, which was like the homage to Onita, and all the other stuff. It's not just me stabbing people with blunt instruments. Like, to me, it should always kind of come up to that. You know, it's like with Louis, it was like going into the whole thing. I go, it's going to be so horrible if I have a bad match with this guy because everyone's going to be like, oh, what the hell is a bum like that doing, you know, tour in Japan? You know, it just felt like all this bizarre pressure was on me. But I think I put that on myself because I was like, you got to give people their money's worth regardless, no matter what.
Well, yeah, and because, you know, not a lot of those people potentially had ever seen you wrestle, let alone wrestle live.
Yeah, exactly. Or they've seen a different incarnation of me. Like if I wrestled as Tony Myers, you know, this guy that dwelled in nightclubs all tripped out on knowing God knows what. It's like, or any incarnation I always took with the gimmick, you know, any which way I went with it. It was like, I know to local people, it doesn't mean a whole lot that, oh, it's Tony Myers going out there. But, you know, to me, you know, with the Leatherface thing and the mask and everything, you know, actually afterwards, I migrated more toward the Chainsaw Tony thing because I thought, you know, that'll separate me from Leatherface, and people can see it's my real hair. It's the mask itself is like an homage to Hayabusa because it's a Hayabusa mask, but it's just it's done with Leatherface. It's the exact same thing with the style and everything. So it was like going into it, it was like, how am I going to be different from the other two? And it's like you have to be a 2018 version of it, which explains, the highlights and the real long hair and all that crazy stuff. But I didn't want to be just like a clone of either of the first two. I'll do their mannerisms, stuff like that. But to me, it was like, you have to make it different, or you have to make it unique. You can't just copy someone else's everything.
Yeah, well, like how you do the chainsaw Tony thing, like where you kind of mix it up. It's almost like it's half you, half Leatherface, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And then even in the promo thing, where the guy's speaking in half Japanese, it's like, well, I thought about it realistically. As big and stupid, and basically the guy's retarded. It's like, well, for all of his faults and everything, there is a bit of like smart in him. There is a bit of the guy being kind of wise. Otherwise, how would he know, what door to get out in the building, or where to dress, or how to dress himself, or how to lace his shoes? There's a justified way of why this guy is a monster and why he thinks he's right in being a monster.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, where you can't just have him be a complete idiot.
Yeah, I mean, I never looked at like crazy gimmicks or monster gimmicks. I never looked at it like, how would this guy know where to pick up a check or to cash a check from the promotion if he's so crazy or whatever. And then it's like, for all the people that see you leaving the arena, they see you just toting your bag and you're just kind of like a normal guy with a mask on. It's like, well, there's got to be an added dimension to it. There has to be some wise. Or you can't believe that this guy has been in Japan for, 15 years alone with the gimmick itself. You can't believe that this guy hasn't learned any Japanese. Like, that's not even plausible. So that's why you see him every now and then. He'll kick out a gimmick and just start yelling and cursing in Japanese, because it's all stuff that he's overheard, or all stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, I was going to say, even like if you didn't know the language, if you've been there that long, you're going to pick up on something here and there.
Yeah, and I always thought the American version of it is fun, because this guy has been in Japan so long, you have to know that he's picked up on a lot of Japanese. And I mean, that's what I wanted to do with Louis, and everything else was, just kind of going through some Japanese customs. I pointed it out, like, even through Facebook, I pointed out that legit, going against Louis in a singles match, there was at least 2 times where I counted myself like getting choked up about something. And one of them was, the place broke out into an FMW chant. I just thought, man, they know what everything is meant to me. Like they know that anything that the promotion ever needed in the latest, incarnation of FMW. And it was the place that I always wanted to be. And, being as big of an Onita fan as I was, and a Pogo fan and everything else, like, they just knew how much FMW is meant to me, and just how much of my life stateside I've missed out on by being over there and doing what I can for those guys. But also, too, on top of the sacrifice, I look over there and I see Louis decked out as Mr. Pogo, and it's like, God, would Pogo have loved this? I know that I've told the story elsewhere where it was like Pogo's ultimate goal for WWS was to run like an all-Gaijin tournament. And Louis was one of the guys that he hand-selected. Like it would have been Louis on an airplane to compete for Mr. Pogo's WWS in a one-night tournament. Like, how incredible is that? Like, the death of Pogo took its toll on people in so many different ways. You could just imagine, an 8-man tournament with guys like Eddie Kingston. Pogo was high on Ego Fantastico, Matt Tremont. These were all people, Chris Kuehling, who wrestled pro champion. There's guys like that, Pogo took a liking to, just by proxy, by, hey, who is this guy? Who is that guy? with Chris Kuehling, who's, one of my better friends outside and inside of wrestling. With him, it was different. Pogo heard me listening to The Doors' People Are Strange. And he came in the room and he was like, "What are you doing? What is that?" He goes, "I love that song." And I go, "Watch this." And it was Kuehling morphing into his, I don't know if you've ever seen his gimmick or not, but it is so creatively awesome. It's worth mentioning.
I'm trying to remember. Off the top of my head, I don't think I've seen it.
The entire surface behind the gimmick is he was given so many, and, I was there when he was breaking in as a rookie. He was given so many outlandish and stupid gimmicks, just, hey, you're the Japanese assassin tonight. Hey, tonight you're the Boston Strangler. He was given all these gimmicks that were so goofy and just such bombs that he eventually just went nuts. And then under his legal name, he wound up lashing out at everybody and saying, "This is who I am, and fuck all these stupid gimmicks. I'll fucking kill somebody." Because legit, the guy is 6'4" and like 245, 250, like a thick 245. And, basics wise, the guy was on point with everything. He's one hell of a talent. But, yeah, it was like, I always looked at that gimmick and I go, that kind of sums up the whole Chainsaw Tony thing. Is that, I had been given so many chances and so many gimmicks that, eventually one day I was just like, I'll be this gimmick under here, but here's the reason why I'm pissed off, bitter, angry. Here's the reason why I want to draw blood.
Well, that sounds really cool. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, the video and the editing that was done by Eddie from the Shining Wizards Network, to this day, I'll go to bat for and say it's one of the most brilliant things you've ever seen, where you see this guy just morph into complete, insanity, because he was given just one dud gimmick after another. And, the wrestlers would make fun of him. And, growing up, everybody made fun of him, which, I can relate to. If you're a big wrestling fan and you come to school wearing a WrestleMania 3 t-shirt, and, the kids in my school weren't very nice to me. I grew up in an all-Italian town. So it was like, they found it kind of weird that I'd be wearing pro wrestling t-shirts to school. It wasn't exactly the coolest thing to do at the time.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, now I only have 4 weeks left, and I'm getting everybody I ever went to high school or grade school with that wants to hang out and kind of pick my brain. And, hey, what's it like living overseas?
It's like the tables have turned.
Yeah, and it's just like, you're not going to make amends. Now, you're not. It's just, I kind of went my own direction. I wanted it more than, I feel like almost more than anybody on this planet. It's just that I kind of sort of got lucky because a day doesn't go by, not a week or a month, where I'm over there where someone messages me and goes, "Hey man, how do I get a foot in the door? How do I do any of that Japanese stuff?" And I'm just like, it is so different from 1994, how I got a foot in there, to 2018, where it's just so different. It is so different.
I was gonna say it's like light years different.
Yeah, it's to the point where a guy goes from wrestling a blow-up doll and wrestling, an 8-year-old little girl to being the top wrestler in the entire country within a 10-year span of time. He goes from wrestling with a joke fed, and that same joke fed is now the fodder system. DDT is the, little sister of New Japan Wrestling.
Which is crazy to think about.
And it is. But you know what else, too? Something had to give. Something had to change. New Japan, when you look at New Japan now, and you look at what it was 10 years ago, it doesn't even look like the same promotion.
That's true.
It's underwent different owners, and at one point they had a video game that was the owner, video gaming company or corporation that had owned them to, and then in the days of Inoki and some of the weird stuff that he would book. And then it, delved into the whole shoot fighting atmosphere, like back in 02 and 03.
Onita wrestled there for one of their big shows back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, which to me was fantastic.
That was a weird thing to see.
Tell me the coolest heel I've ever seen in my entire life, the best heel I've ever seen, was when he's coming out to wrestle Chono.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just see the fans pelting him with garbage, and Onita just smiling, smoking a cigarette, going,
Like he doesn't even give a shit.
Yeah, he's like, so what? I'm a garbage wrestler. You know what I'm going to do? And he had this attitude on his face. You could read his face. He was saying, I'm taking all this money that I'm getting from all you assholes showing up, and I'm going to run for the Japanese diet, and I'm going to win. You know, the Japanese diet is the equivalent of the United States Senate. Can you imagine Chris Christie doing something that outrageous? There's Onita with a big smile on his face, dragging a steel chair out there, like, go ahead, hit me with garbage. Get it out of your system. I'm garbage. Yeah, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to lay down for this idiot. Thanks for the money.
Yeah, that's great. All right, to start wrapping things up, what can the fans expect from you for the rest of this year and the start of 2019?
Well, as of now, September 24th, I fly out to Oregon, Washington. WUW is the name of the promotion. Ron Von Hess runs it. He has students. I'm also doing a couple seminars out there, just to try to help wherever I can with young guys breaking in. And it's like from there, I think I explained this before, I go all the way back to, because the Japanese had bought my ticket for Newark International. Right out the gate, October 8th, it's me and Takase on top, where I challenge for the WWS World Heavyweight title against him. And it's like, of course, Halloween's the biggest night of the year, the biggest gimmick night of the year for me, too. And then eventually they're like, are you going to stick around for the 18-year anniversary show for WWS? What would it take for you to stay here? And I'm like, just filling up all those dates. So right into 2019, I'm staying straight through in Japan. So I have a full 4 or 5 months solid that I'm doing over there. And that covers about everything from the Eagle promotion to Battle Aid to 666, some of the DDT shows. There's just so many independents over there that there are, work is available. You'd have to be insane to turn down.
See, I was going to say, I don't think a lot of people realize that there's so many companies over there.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I brought up Ron Von Hess. He does a lot of work for, like, Secret Underground, Style E. There's a whole plethora of like at least 4 or 5 different companies that run out of that same building. And instead of ring ropes, they have like a chain put up. So everything looks like a complete shoot. There's Secret Base. There's so many. There's just a whole plethora of independents out there. And,
that's a cool little twist.
Oh, to me, those are so fun, man. Like, I remember Owate came to me and he goes, because Pogo would always have him on his WWS undercards. And, I don't want to say who over there, but it was one of the veterans gave the guy like a real beating. And, he's only a 21, 22-year-old kid. Well, I went against him last year in a singles match, and we're doing inside cradles, kick outs, sunset flips, arm drags, everything. And, he was just kind of blown away with, I'd go to pick him up for a slam and drop him behind me and be like, let's see what he does. You know what I mean? Like, let's just see if he has the intuition to grab a hold and I turned right around. He gave me a Rana and I was like, this guy gets it. This kid is fucking talent. This guy's great. And I was like, I remember too, not to get cocky, but a lot of the guys were like, God damn, you had the best match on the card with that kid. And I was like, no, because I'm bad with compliments. I'm very humble. And I told him, I was like, he goes, if you're going to do that kind of thing, he goes, the guys in Eagle are going to, they're going to love this. And he was like, you willing to now? I go, yeah, everybody deserves a chance. Everybody deserves like when I was alive on Memphis TV, I was wrestling Tracy Smothers, and he would go to throw me off the ropes and go, sunset flipping, man. Everybody deserves that. At least a chance to shine.
Oh, yeah.
We went into Matt Tremont's very first match in Japan. It's like a 6-man. And they go, you guys got like 7 or 8 minutes out there, just squash them. I remember looking at DJ going, I ain't squashing nobody. because then you haven't beat anybody. Like, why would you squash these guys? They're not that bad. I was like, I was like, that one guy over there with the mask on, you can't call him by name because you don't know if DJ and them know this guy. I was like, guy with the white mask over there. I've had singles matches with him. He's great. I'm like, you can't just squash these guys, man. Even if you're getting put in the main event. It's like, you beat him in a dominant fashion, but come on, man. To not even give these guys a comeback or nothing.
I was going to say, at least let them get their shit in.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched this guy do, like, a hip toss into a drop kick that looked awesome. I'm like, at least let him do that, And then I went on record to say that, like, if anybody ever doubts the talent of Matt Tremont, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. The last 3 minutes of him going back and forth into that finish were like inside cradle, roll up, some of the most incredible wrestling anybody's ever seen. So much for, deathmatch guys and the genre and the whole, yeah, but they can't wrestle. No, I saw it with my own 2 eyes.
I couldn't agree more. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, Tony, how can they contact you on social media?
Well, I mean, Facebook is me, is mine, Tony Myers. I tend to get right back with people's messages and everything. I hate to, like, ignore anybody. I just don't feel it's, I eventually get back with people. But you won't find much in a whole lot of, like, Chainsaw Tony on there. The Instagram account is solely developed for the entire Leatherface Chainsaw Tony thing. Everything out of there is me putting up pictures of the gimmick and everything else, and a lot of the matches and stuff I've been through with it. So I hardly, if ever, rarely use Twitter. I just don't see the point in it. but there's some gems out there. I try to keep it interesting.
I gotta agree with you. I personally only use it for this show because I think it's a cesspool.
Yeah, it's like I'll keep up with several guys through Twitter just because that's the easiest way to get a hold of them. It's like, that, because, I mean, overall, it just seems like Twitter is kind of like in a downward spiral. Like, no one's really paying attention to it.
Well, and it's just people want to be, like, really negative on there. It's the worst.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have read more criticism. You wouldn't believe the stuff that surfaces, People, hey, man, you're not really Leatherface. It's like, yeah, you're right, But,
you got me.
Yeah. Oh, gee, I didn't know. Well, you sure showed me.
It's like, what am I going to do with my life now?
Yeah, my life is over. I got I'm this jackbag with a friggin' egg for a profile picture ripping into me. Whoopity-doo.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
That's going to derail me in any kind of way from continuing to do what I do. It's not.
Yeah, but I wanted to personally thank you for taking the time to come on and have a chat with me.
Yeah, I thank you for the platform, man. It's, you get people that'll say something about the plethora of podcasts out there. I think it's a great way to get things off your chest because it's not like I can go into, like, I have a regular job in the States catering. It's not like I'm catering some, corporate food event and that I could tell them about anything that I've been through recently or about what I'm about to do or how I'm leaving or even what would it be like if I went up to any of those people at my job, any of the cooks or chefs, and started telling them about the time that that Onita peed on the side of the road. It's like,
yeah, I don't think that would go over very well.
Yeah, they wouldn't know where to turn or what to do. They'd be like, yeah, that seems great, man. Like, yeah, but with you, you can relate, you can understand, especially the stories that you told me about Onita. Like that's just him. That's just the way he is.
Absolutely. But with that note, we're going to get out of here for tonight. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, give us a thumbs up, all that stuff. And we'll see you back next time. Have a good night, everybody.